Okay, so the first page of this my practical document shows the use of conditional structures, and the first one here is the if-else conditional structure. If a condition is satisfied, then this instruction that follows should be performed if the condition is true. Else, the instructions that should be performed if the condition is false. So in some cases, you want to program a particular solution, which depends on the condition. Okay, so you type in the condition that needs to be satisfied. Maybe when a user enters a value into a text box, for example, and then you say if whatever value they entered is this, then this must be done if it is true. And else would be the alternative to that previous instruction. So if whatever they entered into a particular text box does not satisfy the condition, then the else is performed. Or whatever instruction is within the else parenthesis is going to be performed. So we'll be seeing how this can be applied using Visual Studio. So the first exercise is calculating BMI. BMI is body mass index, all right? And it's a measure of the body weight of a person based on their weight and height. Okay, so it is used to estimate a healthy body weight based on a person's height. So that means we need at least two parameters there. Should I say, in this case, we need two elements to determine the BMI of a person. That's the weight and the height. So we try to create a project called Prac 5 Exercise 1. But in this case, you can make yours Prac 3 Exercise 1 to signify that it's Programming Practical 3. So I'm just going to name this as Prac 3 Exercise 1. So I'll create a new project. By now, I believe you should know how to create a new project because we've done it twice in the past two practical sessions. So you go to Microsoft Visual Studio, you go to the Visual Basic Templates, you go to Windows, you select Windows Forms Application, and then you change the name of your project to Prac 3 Exercise 1. And then save it where you've always been saving it, or you can always change the location by clicking on Browse. Then you click OK, and our new project is being created. All right. So create a project called Prac 3 Exercise 1. The form that you create should look similar to the image below. The text box labeled BMI should be read only and centrally aligned. The default text value should be set to 0. We can do these things from the properties window of this particular text box. Okay, but before then, what we want to do is we want to create an interface that looks exactly like what you have in this image here. All right, so to create the interface, let's come to the design view, and then we drag it, two labels, enter weight here and enter height here. So you come to toolbox, label, first label, another label, and we have a text box. We have three text boxes. So this is the first one. This is another one. And there is a third one down there. Okay, we have another label for BMI somewhere here. Okay, and then we have another label here that says kg and m to indicate kilogram and meters. So label here, another label here. This can be a bit closer. So all I'm doing now is just first creating the interface before even starting the coding of the different controls. Okay, so here you have this, and then you have two buttons by the right. So we have one button here, and we have another button here. Okay, so I believe we have all the controls. Now we can start renaming the text properties of these controls. So let's rename the text properties of these controls. So firstly, this one should be enter width here, enter width here. And then the second one should be enter height here. So you go to the properties, text properties, and you change it to enter height here. And this should be BMI. And this should be kilogram, just kg. This should be M for meters. And this button should be, the text should be check weight. Check weight. And this should be get BMI. All right, so you have the buttons, you have the labels, we have an interface similar to the image we have on the document. And then the form also needs to be changed. The text and the title bar of the form needs to be changed to weight convert. So click on the form and change the text to weight convert. And there you have it. Okay, so all we have is the interface. Then you can save this just so you don't forget. Now, there are other things that we need to change regarding the BMI. So you click on the text box for the BMI. It says the text box labeled BMI should be read only and centrally aligned. So let's go to the properties window, and then you look for the properties that talks about read only, that talks about the alignment of the particular control, and that talks about the default text value. Okay, so let's look for that here by the properties window. Okay, read only. Here you have a property called read only. It controls whether the text in the edit control can be changed or not. So in this case, we don't want the text in the BMI to be changeable by the user. So we want it to be read only. That means it can only be read. It cannot be written into. It cannot be edited. So when you say read and write, so if you have read and write privileges on something, it means you can read that thing, you can view it, and you can also write, or you can edit it, you can change it. But if it's read only, it means you can only view it. So we want this to be read only. So we'll come to the read only here, and you change from false to true. So now it is, you see it's a bit faded out. So when this runs, the user cannot be able to tamper with it. Okay. And then another property we need is that the default text value should be set to 0. The default text value should be set to 0. So Again, you look for the properties for the default text value, and then you set that to 0, or you can just, go to the text property and type in 0 there. Okay, so text property here is 0. Okay, and then let's make this centrally aligned. You see where it says text align? We want the text to be aligned to the middle center. Okay, and there you have it. Okay, so we have done those 3 things on the text box. Okay, so again, all we are still doing is still trying to just create the interface, nothing more, nothing less. Then in the next instructions, they will be talking about how to actually now, program each of the controls to do what we want them to do for us in this system. Okay, so instruction 2 says double click on the first button labeled check weight to get to the programming area. So remember, as I told you in previous sessions, to go to the programming area of a control, you double click on that control and then it takes you to the programming area. Okay, in my own case, I'm getting an error. I'm getting an error on my side. Okay, just give me a moment. Let me try to fix this error. Okay, I'm still trying to fix the error that's preventing my software from starting. So I think this has to do with my user account or my student accounts for the particular for this Microsoft Visual Studio. So please give me a moment. Let me just resolve this, and then we'll continue. But the stage we are now is when we are supposed to be going into the programming area of each of the buttons that we have in our interface. So in case you're trying that, you don't have to wait. You can just keep designing your interface. You can continue designing your interface and to see, and then when you get to the point where we need to continue, then I'll catch up with you there. But this is just giving me some strange things here. I really don't know, because this was working fine just now. Okay, let's see. if you experience any of these errors during your own time, then you can just inform me. Then obviously I can be able to share with you however I am able to resolve this, because with the Microsoft Visual Studio 2015, sometimes it is possible that there are certain things that, there's certain errors that might pop up that you're not familiar with. Okay, but then in this case, I think I might just have to use a previous project that once worked successfully, because this seems not to be working the way I want it to do. So let me open the one that we did last week, and then I can use that to continue where we stopped. Okay, so give me a moment, please. I'll be there shortly. Okay, so the 2015 is giving me issues. I think it's an issue with the software on my computer. Yours may not give you that issue, but apparently it's an issue with the software on my computer. So I'm just going to switch over to 2010. I will switch over to the 2010 version of this same software, which should pretty much do the same thing that we want. The only slight differences you may experience would be maybe the icons and the location of some icons and how they look might be a little bit different. But in terms of the concept, in terms of the logic, it's still the same thing. So whether you have 2010 installed on your computer or it is 2015, then you should still be able to grab the concept. But obviously, 2015 is the recommended one for this module. Okay, so I would still advise you to try to install 2015. Okay, so I have opened 2010 on the screen, and I'll be showing you shortly, but I just want to make sure that everything is fine before I show you. Just bear with me. Okay, so I'm just gonna create a new project. All right, so I just want to create a new project using my Visual Studio 2010 version. So unfortunately, I'll have to redo all those things I did earlier. I wanted to explain to you because we've done it together already. So I'm just going to be as fast as possible. Okay, as you can see, maybe the location of those things may be a little different, but as I said, it's one and the same thing that it's going to achieve for you. So right here, I just want to have my label, another label here, another label in front, another label here. Then I have two buttons here, and then I have three text boxes, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now I will rename the text properties of each of the labels. How to set BMI to read only, you can just check it now because I will do it again on the screen. So please keep checking on the screen. So now let me rename all this. So this should be enter width here. This should be enter height here. This should be enter width here, and this other one should be enter height here. And this should be BMI. This should be BMI. This should be kg. And this should be M for meters. And this button should be check weight. And this button should be, okay, you can expand this button in case it's not showing well. And this button should be get BMI. So we change the text property. Remember, what we're changing is the text property and not the name property. Okay, so the name of the button will still be button 2. But when we change the text property that is displayed, then that is what we're doing now. Okay, so now for the person that asked about the BMI and changing it to, read only. So please take note. You click on the text box and you go to the properties window. And then in the properties window, you look for, in this case, we have been told to set the default text value to 0. So I've tapped 0 here. And then you look for read only. So the read only property is here. Read only, you change from false to true. So when it is true, that means it is actually read only. When it is false, that means it is not read only. Okay, so you change to true, and then you change the alignment, the text alignment in the text box, you change it to center according to the instructions there. You change this to the center, and then we have it. So I have the interface as it is on the left in this image here. And then I can go ahead now to double click on the first button labeled check weight to get to the programming area. And as you can see, the error is not showing here. So for whatever reason, I will try to fix that on my computer later. So now we are within the programming session of the check weight button. And use an if statement to check whether or not the weight entered by the user is a valid number. Weight entered should not be a negative number. That means it must not be less than 0, all right? Type the following code that will allow the button to check whether the age is a valid number or not. Okay, so I think this meant weight and not age. Okay, so here we are within the area and we have been told to make sure that whatever value is entered into this weight here is not a negative number. And remember, a negative number is a number that is less than 0. So we use an if statement to specify the condition that if the value entered in text box 1.text is less than 0, then message box. So whatever comes after the then is the instruction that the program must perform. This is the test that must be carried out, or the condition that needs to be satisfied before this instruction can be performed. And that was what I was explaining to you up here. If a condition is true, there's an instruction for it. If it's false, there's another instruction for it. Okay, so but in this case, we just want to check if the text box 1.text is less than 0, then the message box, there must be a message box to show us that the value you've entered cannot be negative, because it means if the user entered a value that is less than 0, definitely it's a negative number. So we want this error, this message box to show them that whatever they entered cannot be negative and they have to change it to a positive number. until before they can stop seeing this error message. Okay, so type here if text box 1 dot text is less than 0, then message box dot show should be a text that says value entered cannot be negative. And then the second part is the text on the title bar of the message box. Okay, the text to be displayed and the title, like the caption. Okay, which is supposed to be a string. So we start also with quotation marks, and then we close this, and then you see automatically the end if shows there. So you type the if and you continue typing, the end if automatically shows there. Okay. So number 4 says run your program and enter a negative number. Click the click on the check wait button and see what happens. Enter a positive number, click the same button and notice what happens. Okay, so we're controlled to run the program. Let's click on start. The program is running, and if everything is fine, you should see the program showing up somewhere on the screen. And then, so this is the program that is currently running. Okay, so we have been told that we should enter a negative number. An example, okay, can someone just give me an example? Can someone give me a negative number just to be sure that you are participating in what we're doing? In the chat section, please put an example of a negative number that you want me to enter into this program. Quick. Oh, okay. I have 4 numbers. Okay, thank you, Sandy Gugletu, Tandazani, Samgidisiwe, and Ayanda, and Omenati. Okay, I think you guys have given me more than enough. Thank you for that. So I have minus 18, minus 6, minus 10, minus 45, minus 2, minus 8. Okay, well, yeah, we'll just try to test everything. So let's enter minus 18 here. Minus 18. Check wait. You see the message pops up that says value entered cannot be negative because minus 18 has been entered into text box 1.text. And because our code was working on text box 1.text, you see that is where the error came up. If the code was entered here, minus 45, and you remove this and you press check wait, you see nothing happens because and you see we have an error, a logical error, because whatever we specified was only for text box 1.text. So whatever condition is trying to satisfy is within text box 1.text. So you run it again, and then for text box 1.text, let me drag this here. For text box 1.text, we've tried minus 18. Let's try minus 6 by Google Letter. See check wait, you see it says value entered cannot be negative. If you change that again to minus 10, minus 10 also gives us the same error. And absolutely every negative value that you enter, minus 45 by Samge gives us negative, minus 2 also gives us negative by Ayanda, and then minus 8 by Uminati also gives us the same message. Okay, so that's just to show that our code is actually working for that condition. So we can close that and go back to our instructions. So instruction number 4 says, instruction number 4, second line, the second paragraph says, go back to it says enter a positive number, click the same button and notice what happens. So I'm going to run the program again. enter a positive number. Let's enter a positive number here and see what happens. So like enter a positive number, like say 43, check wait, you see nothing happens. Okay, because here we have not specified what should happen if everything is fine. We have only specified what should happen if something is not according to what we want. Do you get what I mean? So there should be two parts. So we have said if this is negative, then show this box. But what if it's positive? What should happen? Okay, now let us code that by adding another line before the end if. Okay, so here it says go back to the code that you typed in step 3, which is this code. All right, it says before the line that says end if, before this line, type the following line of code. So I'll just put a line here before end if, and we'll type the following line of code. So if the background of text is less than 0, then message box should show this. Else, that means else. That means if it's opposite, or if the condition is not true, if text background of text less than 0 is false, that will be else. Else, the message box does show value entered. Value entered is valid. Our title bar, we have to write another separate column to show the title bar of the message box. Now end if. So if you run this program again and you enter a negative value, of course now you know there'll definitely be if you enter a negative value, then you know that there's definitely going to be a different message box. So if I enter -10, check wait, value entered cannot be negative, that's correct. If I change this to 16 and check wait again, it said value entered is valid. Okay, now we have two different message boxes, or two different messages showing depending on the condition or depending on the value entered into the enter with here text box. Okay, so that's what we've done so far. And then number 5 says run your program again, enter values, click the check wait button and see what happens. Notice that a different output is provided depending on whether you enter the positive value or a negative value. And that's correct, we've just tried that. Go back to your form design and double click on the button labeled Get BMI. Declare a local level variable named button choice as type dialog result. So we have been told to go back to the design form, to the form design view, which is this view, and to double click on the button labeled Get BMI. Remember, double clicking takes us to the programming area of that particular control or object, in this case, the button. So if you double click here, remember it brings us to the same class, but now a different subroutine, because this is now for the button. As you can see here, this is saying button 2, and this is saying button 1. Okay, so the first button, which is button 1, is check wait. The second button, which is button 2, is get BMI. So you must be sure that you are within the right subroutine before starting to code what you want that button to do. If you're not sure, go back to the form, double click on that button. It should take you, it takes the mouse cursor to where you should be typing whatever code that you want. Okay, so we are within the second button for get BMI. We've been told to declare a local level variable named button choice as type dialog result. Remember, to declare as a variable, you start with a dim followed by the name of the variable. According to this, it is called button choice, no spaces. Remember, we don't put spaces when you're creating variable names. Button choice as dialog results. Okay, button choice as dialog result. Okay, so here, what you're trying to do is we want when we click on we want the result of a dialog box to determine whether to proceed or to cancel a particular operation. A dialog box pops up and asks you, are the values correct? Yes or no? So if you say yes, then you can proceed to do whatever it is you want to do. But if it's no, then that means it has to cancel all the operations. So the choice of the user will now determine the next thing that needs to be done in this program. The choice of the user will determine what needs to be, because now you're trying to check if all the values entered into the text boxes here are correct. You want to confirm if they are correct before you proceed. So that confirmation message is going to be stored in the variable called button choice. Okay, so whatever result comes from the dialog box, which pops up, if the user clicks on the yes button, then the value of the yes is stored into the button choice. If the user clicks on the no button, then the value of the no is stored in the button choice. And then in this case, they perform different actions. Okay, so for example, in this case now, as you can see on the screen, here we've declared button choice as dialog result. Now, as the instruction says in the document, button choice, which is now we want to store whatever whatever was clicked or selected by the user is now what we want to program into this particular button. So watch as this is typed here that says button choice is equal to, so we want to assign something to the button choice. Now we've already declared it as a dialog result, and then we assign it to message box. Show, remember the first part of the message box would show you the actual message that will be displayed. So okay, let's write it as capital letters. Are the values correct? Are the values correct? That's a question mark. Then followed by the what shows in the title bar of the button choice, which is confirmation. Oh, sorry, of the message box rather. Confirmation, and then followed, because it's a dialog box now, by two buttons. So what comes after this is going to be buttons. Okay, so never really get to this part of the message box. We only just stop at the messages. But another argument within the message box allows you to specify which buttons can be displayed in a message box. Okay, so it specifies a text. So the message box specifies a text, a caption, and buttons. So the text is the first one you type, comma, after the comma. The second one is the caption or the title bar of the message box. And then the third one is the buttons that should be shown within the message box. Okay, so here we'll keep on typing as message box buttons. Now, the two different buttons. If you can see here, there is yes, no, cancel. But what we need is just an option of either yes or no. And then you close that. And in this case, we now specify that. So remember here, you are assigning whatever the user selects from these buttons. If the user selects yes, it's stored in this button choice. If the user selects no, it's also stored in this button choice. But obviously, the user can only select one of the two. Okay, so we're not saying if the user selects a particular option. So if button choice, if the value stored into the variable button choice is the no, which is windows.first form dot dialog results. If the dialog result selected by the user is no, that's what this is trying to say. So that's what this line means. The Windows forms, that is what we're working on now. We're working on a form in Windows, all right? And then the dialog result of that form. And then if it's no, if no is what is selected, then text box 1 and then text box 2 dot clear. It means if the user selects no, you must clear all this, you must clear the contents of text box 1 and text box 2. Okay. Remember, text box 1 and text box 2 here are enter weight and enter height. Okay, that's text box 1 and text box 2. Remember, we didn't rename the names of the text boxes. We didn't change the names. Okay, so if button choice is equal to no, which is no from the dialog result. Okay, then this should happen. So if the user clicks no, text box 1 should be cleared. Text box 2 also should be cleared. Okay, so that's the method that we performed. Remember, clear is a method here. Remember when we talked about differences between properties and method. Okay, now that's what will happen if this happens. So what if it doesn't happen? What if the user clicks on the other option, which is yes? So now remember the else comes in the other condition. So the first one you set is what will happen if that condition is true, and then if the condition is false, whatever you want to happen, you type it within the else. Okay, just like we did up here. All right, remember that, just like we did up here. And then here you type else. So what should happen if the user selects something else except obviously the name of yes. Okay, this should happen. So you declare BMI as decimal, which is in this case text box. So now we're trying to do the calculation for, if the user selects yes, now we want to actually calculate the BMI. We want to do the mathematical calculation. So BMI is going to be the weight divided by height, that's text box 2 dot text, multiplied by text box 2 dot text. That's like square. That's text box 2 dot text square. Text box 2 dot text multiplied by text. Okay, so that is the formula for BMI. So first thing obviously is to declare BMI as a type. In this case, we declare BMI as a decimal. Immediately we initialized it, or we assigned an initial value to BMI. As I said, if this is a bit confusing, you can try to write this line by line. So you can first declare BMI. In fact, if you want, you can even declare BMI up here in case it's going to confuse you, or you can declare it when you need it. Okay, so in this case, we're declaring it within this, and then we are saying, so you can say dim BMI as decimal, and then you can come down here to say BMI is equal to text box 1 dot text, whichever way is still fine. Okay, but obviously the first one saves you lines of codes. So we have declared BMI as decimal, and we have assigned it to the following calculation. And then we have text box 3. Remember, text box 3 is what should show the actual value of the result of the BMI calculation. And there is a function to round it to 2 decimal places. You can check your notes for more of this about rounding to 2 decimal places. So we are saying text box 3. Normally, in this case, you want to round it of convert decimal dot round BMI, 2. So this is going to do the following. Number one, it's going to convert this BMI you get here to a decimal and round it to 2 decimal places. Okay, Remember, the BMI is already declared as a decimal number. So here now, what you're doing is now to round it to 2 decimal places. Okay, so if we run this, let's see what happens. If we run this, let's see what happens. Enter weight here. The weight is 65 kilograms and the height is, okay. Then if you click check weight, value entered is valid. Thank you. That's because it is not a negative number. Now the weight is fine. Get BMI. Now it's asking, are the values correct? It's asking you to confirm if the values you've entered are correct, if they are what you want. Okay, so if you mistakenly entered 65 instead of 68, then if it says are the values correct, you click no, and notice what happens. It clears the text boxes because we specified here that if the choice is no, then it should clear the text boxes, and that's what happened. When we clicked no, it's cleared the text boxes and gives you a chance to do what? To re-enter the values that are correct. So if the value correct is 70, for example, and the height is maybe 4 meters, then when you say get BMI, if you are sure that the values are correct, you click yes. If you're not sure, you click no and you try again. So here, if you click yes, you see what happens here? It calculates, it gives you a value of the BMI here as 4.38 in 2 decimal places. And that is what this function did here. It rounded it off to 2 decimal places. So our text box 3.text here is now shown as 2 decimal places. So that is how this program will be executed using the Visual Basic codes. Any questions? Any questions? So what we have been doing so far is just the first exercise that talks about calculating the BMI. The first exercise which talks about calculating the BMI, and we have gone through some of the lines in the codes and why we have the lines there. Any question? Okay, so this is the formula for the BMI that we used, which is the weight entered, or the mass in kilogram, divided by the height square. That's why we had text box 2 times text box 2. And we're told to convert the value to 2 decimal places. And then to do this, you use the round function as I showed you in the code. This is to convert it to 2 decimal places. If you were not told to convert it to 2 decimal places, then you can just, then you wouldn't need to do all of this. Okay, so that is for exercise 1. Okay, I cannot see any questions in the chat section, so I'll just move on to the next exercise, which is exercise 2. Exercise 2 says guess the number. So in this exercise, you must design a game that would allow a user to enter a number. A game that would allow the user to enter a number. So guessing the number correctly would result in a win, and guessing a number incorrectly would result in a loss. So it's a simple game. The user will be presented with an interface to guess the number. So what is the number? You will decide that. Okay. So if the user of your application is able to enter the correct number, then that means they've won the game. If they are able to enter incorrectly, and if they entered the incorrect number, then that means they've lost the game. Okay, so design a project with a sample interface that would allow a user to enter a number in a text box. Create a button that would allow the user to finalize his or her guess. Once the button has been clicked, the system must determine whether the number entered is the correct number or not. You will need to declare a variable called correct and store some chosen number here. So you choose the number that you want as the correct number that the user has to guess in order for them to win the game or not. So if the number entered by the user is correct, which obviously means if it is the same thing as the number that you have stored or declared in this variable called correct, then that means you must output this message that says correct, you win. Otherwise, the system must output incorrect, you lose. And then the message should be displayed in the message box. Expand the system so that the system will tell the user if the number they have guessed is too high or too low or correct. So to do this, you will have to use an if statement within another if statement, or you will use an else if statement. Okay. Expand task 4 of this exercise. If instead of receiving a message saying too high, too low, or correct, display a picture indicating an arrow. Up means too high and down means too low, or a tick means it's correct. These images can be found on the Moodle website in the practicals folder for practical 3. And you will need a picture box on your form to be able to show this image. Okay. So that's the scenario. So in simple terms, we need to create a new project that should allow our user to click on the button, to enter a number, click on the button, and then you would show, oh, the number. So they're trying to guess a number. So if the number you have chosen is 45, and then once the program, obviously that number must have been, the value must have been initialized into the variable that you select. So once the user enters a number, if it's less than 45, there must be a picture that shows when they enter the number and click on the button that says guess or submit. Then if the number they entered is less than the number that is the correct number that you have decided, then there must be an arrow showing, like a down arrow showing that the number they entered is less than the correct number. If they entered a number that is higher or greater than the correct number, there must be an up arrow showing the number they entered is greater than the actual number. But if the number they entered is the same as the number that you have set, then there must be a tick showing that yes, they have guessed correctly. So that's what the project is supposed to do. Okay, so we're going to create just a new project for that. So Windows Forms application, let's call this get, and I'll say okay. Okay. So here, what you need is have that will allow your user to enter a number. Okay. So according to the instructions here, it says that your project must have obviously a text box where the user will enter a number. So let's put the text box here and add it to the screen. So we have the text box here. Okay. And then we need a picture box also at some point to show the image to determine if our user is on the right track or not. And of course, we need a button that will allow a user to click to finalize their guess. So in this text box, the user will enter the number and will determine whether the number is correct or not. And this button will be used to actually program what must happen. And this picture box must show the image, whether it is a tick, an up arrow, or it is a down arrow as well. Okay, so that is what we're trying to achieve in this program. Okay, so that I don't become too fast, I'm just going to show you on the left hand side the codes that we are expected to use to achieve this particular output. Okay, so we want to put all our codes within the button. So you double click on the button, and within the programming area of the button, you type the following. Remember, the instruction says we should declare a variable correct as integer, and in this case, we have to decide which number we want. So can someone tell me which number can we set as our correct number? Anyone? I just need one person to put a number in the chat section. I don't want more than one number. Just one person drop a number, and the one I see first I would use as our correct number. Okay, I've seen one number from Sandile. Sandile says 7. Okay, lucky number 7. So we use 7 as our correct number. Okay, so in this case, obviously the user cannot know what the number is. They just have to guess when we run the program. So now we have declared a variable correct. We call the name of our variable correct, and then we assigned, we declared it as an integer to accept numbers, and then we assigned the initial value to be 7. All right. So now we want to use if statement to say if text box 1. Obviously here there is only one text box, so we are referring to that text box. So if text box 1.text is equal to correct, then picture box 1, remember the picture box, right, that must show the picture that has been selected. So picture box 1 dot image location. So now I have to remember, I said earlier that you have to have downloaded the image from Moodle. So here I'm setting the property. I want to set the property of this object. The object is picture box 1. This is the picture box 1 here. This one, this is the picture box. Okay, I want to set that object. I want to set its image location property to an image that exists within my own computer. Okay, so as I said, in this case now, you would have to be the one to, you must have stored the image somewhere on your own computer, and then in this case you just have to navigate to the location of that image. Okay, so I'm just going to navigate to where that image has been stored. So if the image is correct, we should have a tick. It should be a simple tick that must just show. Okay, I'm trying to look for the image and where I stored it. Okay, obviously, I'm sure we stored our images in different folders. So whatever location that I am trying to specify here would be definitely different from yours. So, but at least when I show you an example of where the image is stored, then you should be able to navigate to wherever you stored your own image as well. So the image we're working with here is an image that shows a tick. Okay, just a simple tick within the a simple tick will pop up within the picture box that we've already specified. Okay. I'm just gonna resume sharing. Picture box one, the image location, is asking where the location of that image on your computer in this case, or sometimes it can be as easy as if you have dragged it into the directory within your project, then that's even much faster. But all I did here was to copy the location of this image. So in my own case, my image can be found here. Okay, so these are the images. This is the tick image to show that it is correct. This is the up arrow image to show that the number entered is higher than the expected number. And this is the down arrow image to show that the number entered is lower than the expected number. So these images have been saved in the following location. So for me to just, to be faster, I just have to right click somewhere here on the location bar here. You copy all of this, or you just right click and you say copy. Okay, and then all this, you see this path, it's called a path. This path shows the location of this folder. Okay, and then this path is what you see here, right? This is the path that you see here up onto this place. Okay, and then within that folder we are looking for the image called tick.jpg. So you put another slash, a backslash, and then followed by the name of the file, which is tick.jpg. So that takes me to the actual location of that image. Remember, what we're looking for is the property. Here we're looking for the property of this particular object. Okay, so we are saying if textbox1.text is equal to correct, in this case, if the user entered this value of 7, remember 7 is the value stored in the correct variable. Okay, so if the user enters 7 into the textbox1.text, then this must show this image to say yes, tick to show correct. Okay, and then let's continue with our condition. Okay, we can ignore the extra properties for now. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say else if textbox1 text. I think I've told you what else if means. So that means if it's not satisfying that condition above, else if, then textbox1.text greater than correct. If whatever was entered in the value stored in the correct variable, then picture box 1. So I'm just going to copy this because it's the same location. I'll copy this and I'll paste it here. But then what I need to change is the name of the image. The location is the same, but what I'm changing now is the name of the image. So if this textbox1.text is greater than correct, then we want it to be an up arrow to show that the number entered is greater. So the name is up arrow.jpg. So I'm just going to write up arrow.jpg, which is found in the same location, which is the practical 3 folder, which is inside this folder, which is inside this folder, just like that, like that, like that. So that's the path. Okay, so as I said, it may be different in yours. It all depends on where you've stored your images. Okay, and then else, again, else means if neither of the two conditions are satisfied, then what should happen? Else, then we should show this image, the down arrow image, which is also called down arrow.jpg. So else show this image, down arrow.jpg. So that means whatever the user entered, if it is not correct, If it is not higher than the expected number, then that means it has to be lower than the expected number. So that's why the else would only have an option. We don't even need to say else text box 1 less than correct, because we know that if the number entered is not equal to correct, if the number entered is not greater than correct, then it has to be less than correct. So we don't need to even write else text box 1 the text less than correct. If you write that, well, it just shows that you still need to understand more about how to write the codes or the logic behind the codes. So here we have written else picture box 1 dot image location. It should show us a down arrow, and then you end if, and then we can run the program and see what happens. Okay, so here if I click on the run, you see, okay, let me close that and rename. Let's say guess. Let me change the name of the button to guess. Let me just change it to guess the number. Guess the number. Okay. So I'm going to run this now and see whether this user has entered the correct number or not. So I'm running the program now, and the program is running here. So somebody has used a number. Somebody has given us a number to use in the chat section, and that was Sandile. So can someone else guess the number that Sandile has programmed into this application? So this is like a game. The user has to guess the number that was programmed by the programmer, and type it here and click on this button, and then it will tell the user either is correct or whether the number entered is higher or lower, or is lower than the expected number. So can someone from the chat section just tell me or guess a number that we can enter? Okay, I have one person in the chat section. Tandazani says 20. So let's enter 20. So Tandazani is playing 20, and we say guess the number. You see what happens? An up arrow shows. Why? Because in this case, the number entered by Tandazani is greater than the expected number, or than the correct number, or it's higher. So we specified using an up arrow in our codes that if the text box 1.text is greater than the correct number, then show this picture. Remember? And then this took us to that location of the picture or the image. And this picture is being shown because you have a picture box on your form. Okay, so Tandazani, thank you, but your number is higher than the correct number. Anyone else? Quickly in the chat section. Anyone? 3. Okay, thank you. Someone says 3. Let's check 3 and then click guess the number. Okay, it says, okay, this should be a down arrow, but we need to expand it to show very well. And that is the function of this property. So picture box 1 the size mode is going to stretch the image so that whatever the size of the image is going to occupy the actual text picture box. So 3 is lower than the expected number. Thank you. Anyone else? So if anyone else was to say the number 7, until you say 7, you will not get the correct tick. So in this case, 7 is the correct number, obviously, because that was what we programmed or initialized our variable to be. So 7 is showing as the correct number. Any number above 7, 8, is going to show, okay, this is higher. Any number below 7 is going to show you the down arrow. Or let me just include that property so that our images can show correctly. So just below that line, you can add this code that says picture box one size mode. So this is going to make sure that your image, is fully displayed when you run it. So it stretches the contents of that picture box to fit into it. So if I just run this again, if I run this again and I enter 3, now you can see that the full image is showing because it stretches. No matter the size of the image, it just stretches based on the size of the image. The picture box would stretch based on the size of the image. If the image is smaller, the picture box will also shrink. Okay, so if I enter 7, okay, you notice now that it's, shows you the actual full size of the image based on the picture box size. So that is how to make use of this Visual Basic Code to create a simple game based on what? Conditions, conditional statements. If, then, if, then, if, then, else, depending on how many conditions you have within your program. Sometimes it is not, should I say, it takes more time having to use the if-then statements, and that is why we talk about another type of conditional statement called the case statement. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do today before we leave is the case statement. So we have talked about the if statements and how it can be used. Now let us look at another example of a conditional statement, which is the case statement. Okay, so the case statement, I'm just going to, I think this needs us to create another project. So I'm just gonna, okay, I think I'll just use the same interface, so that I don't have to create a new project. I'll just use the same interface and recreate what we have here on the screen. So in this exercise, students doing a module called ISTN 109. So there is a module, just as an example, a module called ISTN 109. So don't go looking for this module because it's just an example, all right? They are graded based on the following table. So in a particular module, if students obtained 80% and above, they have a grade A. If they obtained greater than or equal to 70 and less than 80, that means if they scored 70, 71, 72 up until 79, then they will get a grade B. If they scored 60 to 69, they get a grade C. So here you need to understand the meaning of these symbols. Less than 20, obviously, it means from numbers 19 down to 0. Okay, that's less than 20. And then greater than or equal to 20, it means it starts from 20 and goes up. So it's 20, 21, 22, 23, up until 49, because here it says less than 50. So you cannot include 50 if it is less than 50. So this here stops at 49. And the students that score from 50 up until less than 60, they have the grade D. So 50 to 59, they will get grade D. Then 60 to 69, they will get grade C. Then 70 to 79 will get grade B. And then 80 and above will get grade A. So that is what is happening in this course or in this module. All right. So students are required to write 3 tests for the course. So I'm just going to delete all these controls because, as I said, I want to use this same project for this exercise 3. Okay, so I'm just going to make this bigger. I can delete all of this because it doesn't apply to what we want anymore for now. Okay, so here I want to create a new interface that has the following. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 labels here, and these are within some group boxes. Okay, so let's look for a group box, which is here. So there's a group box here. in the toolbox, you find the group box, and then there is another group box here below that, and then you can drag this. Okay, let me do this one by one. Group box, first one here, and then another group box somewhere down here. Okay, now the properties of the group box, you can change that to student details. Remember, I'm just trying to recreate whatever we have in that, whatever we have in the interface is what I'm recreating here. And then in this group box 2, it is named as test marks. Okay, and then we have labels. Let me expand this a bit. Let's expand this a bit. I think this needs to go up, or this needs to come down. Okay, we have 3 labels. 1, 2, 3. We have 3 labels here within the group box. The group box was taken from within the toolbox, so you can always find it there. So 1, 2, 3. And then in the test marks, we also have 3 labels. 1, 2, 3. So I'm just gonna, so this is, as you can see, as you create new labels, it automatically assigns a name and a text to it. So this is label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me just make this to be on the same line. Okay, and then we have 6 text. We have 7 text boxes. Okay, I think we have one more label. We have one more label for the final grade. One more label for the final grade somewhere down here. We have text boxes, 7 text boxes. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have created about 7 text boxes. Okay, no, actually, you have to make sure that the first one is the one that you drag there, or just remember the name of all your text boxes so that you don't get them mixed up. Okay, I just try to do it in the fast way, but you can do it one by one until you understand the names of the different text boxes, so that when you're coding it, you don't mistakenly type in the wrong values in the wrong text box. And of course, you can always check the names of the text boxes in the properties window. So just check here. So this is text box 1. This should be text box 1. Let's check the name here. Yeah, that's correct. This should be text box 2. That's correct here. This should be text box 3, text box 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So when you're referring to the text boxes, you know what you're actually referring to, so that when you're doing the calculations, you don't calculate the wrong thing. Okay. So let me just reduce this. Okay. So that everything can fit into the screen. Now we need buttons. We need 3 buttons here. We need 3 buttons. So you drag 3 buttons. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So button 1, button 2, button 3. Now we'll talk about renaming them, or sorry, changing their text property very shortly. Okay. So now we have something like the interface. Now let's change the text properties. So for this group box, you may go further to change the color to blue, but I don't want to waste time doing that. But you can obviously, all you need to do is just to change the properties of the text here to a particular color. But as I said, okay, let us change the Let's see if there is a blue color somewhere here. Okay, that changes all the text. We don't want that. We only want it for the text. So let's undo that. If you want to change the font, you can always come here and change the font to whatever font that you desire. But because of our time, I don't want to use too much time trying to just make it look attractive. The most important thing is to make sure that we understand the functionalities of each of these controls. All right, so we rename this to student number, change the text here to student number. This one is renamed to first name. This is renamed to surname. Remember, once again, what we are changing is the text property and not the name of the actual control. Okay, we're changing the text property that is displayed. This is test 1. This is the label test 2. And this is test 3. So this is to identify the text boxes. That's why we have the labels. So the students have the student number, their first name, their surname. They have they've written 3 tests: test 1, test 2, and test 3. And then there should be a final grade that must be obtained. Final grade. And then there should be a button here called Get Grade. Get Grade. There should be another button here called Clear. And there should be another button here called Close Program. Okay. So far we've tried to recreate this system. The name of the form is Student Mark System. Students Mark System. Okay. All right. So we have the interface. The information displayed in the final grade text box must be centrally aligned. I've shown you how to do that. So all you need to do is click on this text box for the final grade and then come to the properties and change the alignment to center. We've been told that it must also be read only. So we've done that earlier. So you come to the text box of the final grade, come to the properties window, read only, change it from true to false. Sorry, from false to true, from false to true. And then it becomes read only. It means it can only display to the user. The user cannot change the value. Okay. And must not be enabled. Okay. So in this case, we don't want the user to even be able to see that that text box until the answer is coming or the value is coming out. So here, still within the same text box properties, you come to enabled and you set it to false. Okay, so if I just run this, then we see now that this is how it looks like. The text box for the final grade looks like this after performing all these actions. Okay, so as you can see now, you can only make changes here, but for the final grade, you can't make any alterations. Okay, but for now, we only have the interface. It is not working yet. So now the next thing is to code the buttons labeled clear marks and close program to perform their specific functions. Clear marks, I think this should have been clear marks. So let me add marks here. Clear marks. Okay, that's fine now. Clear marks and close program. These are the 2 buttons that we have been told in instruction 3 to code to perform their specific functions. So for clear marks, to code that, you double click on it as usual. Now, what clear mark is supposed to do is to clear all the marks in the text box. Remember, the marks are in these text boxes that we have here. Okay, the marks are within these text boxes here. So can someone tell me what lines of code do we use to clear the content of these text boxes? Because that is what we need to code into this button to clear that content. Can anyone tell me? We've done this in one of the practical sessions and also in one of the tutorial sessions. What line of code can we use to clear the content of these text boxes, starting with the first one? So obviously you need to know the name of the text box. So for this test one, the name of the text box is text box 4. So this is text box 4, this is text box 5, and this is text box 6. So we want to clear their content. Can anyone tell me how that can be done quickly in the chat section? Ten seconds, anyone? Okay, I can't see any contribution from the chat section. Okay, so as I said, the names of the text boxes are text box 4, text box 5, and text box 6. So you can use text box 4 dot clear. Okay, somebody is talking in the chat section. Thank you, Sandile. That's another way to do it. Text box 4 dot text is equal to empty strings, or yeah. So let's use Sandile's method. Text box 4 dot text. You assign that to empty, and then text box 5 text, you assign also to empty for text box 6 dot text empty. Okay, so let's just try to run this to see if that is working for now. So if I enter the value of 45, 65, and 43 into these text boxes, and I click on clear marks, as you can see, it clears the content of text box 4, text box 5, and text box 6. So what it's simply doing is it is setting the content of that text property to blank. Remember I told you when you have the double quotation marks like this without anything in between, it means blank. Okay, so thank you, Sandile. So we've coded the clear marks button. We need to code the close program button. Who can tell me how to code that? Close program button, such that when we click on close program, we want this application to close or to end or to exit. Which line of code can we use to achieve that? Anyone? These are very simple questions that I believe that you should be able to attempt before we even start coding the get grade. So the get grade obviously needs to be the doesn't have to be the final one, but in this case, we're just starting from the simplest one. Anyone who wants to help with the line of code for the close program? Okay, 10 seconds, anyone? Okay, so in this case, the close program now works on the form. So you can just say me.close. You can always go back to your notes or to a tutorial session to check these different functions. So me.close, if you click on close program, you see it closes the form. So the me.close, the method will help you to close that form, which is the application or the program. Okay, so we've coded that, and then we say set. Okay, it says code the get grade button to display the final grade of the student based on the average of the 3 marks. So the final grade should be based on the average of the 3 marks. So it's going to be test 1 plus test 2 plus test 3, all divided by 3. That gives us the average, isn't it? And then whatever the answer is, we now have to determine if it's A, B, C, D, or F grade. Okay, so we use the case structure, the select case structure to determine that very shortly. But before then, let us set access keys of G for get grade, C for clear marks, and P for close program. So we talked about the access keys in the previous tutorial session. Now let's see how we can do this. So you go to the text property of each of these buttons. Okay, so the access keys here. So for the get grade, this is the get grade button. You go to the text property. So it says set access keys of G. So in the get grade, we have two G's. So I'm just going to use the first one. So before the first one, you put in this ampersand symbol before the letter that you want. If you want it to be before letter E, if you want the access key to be letter E, then you put it before letter E. If you want it to be letter T, then you put the ampersand before letter T. So here, we put it before letter G, and then you can see there's a line under that letter G, which is, it means it's our access key. So when we run the program, we can use our shortcut keys to perform the same action on the button, the same thing as clicking that same button. And then for clear marks, to set C as clear marks, you click on that button, you go to the text property of that button, and then you change, and then you add an ampersand before the letter that you want. And then same thing for program, we go to the letter P, before the letter P, you type this ampersand button, which you can find on your keyboard, and then that sets it as the access keys for those buttons. And if you run the program and then you want to use the access keys, you press the alternate key on your keyboard, and then it shows you the access key. And then if I press P, it automatically closes the program. So all I did was to press the alternate key, the Alt key, ALT, the Alt key on the keyboard and the letter P, and that closes the program because that is the access key for that button. So finally, let us code the get grade button. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the code so that you are able to follow line by line. So now we want to code the get grade button. So double click on the get grade button and it takes us to the programming area of the get grade button. Okay, so we've already done this, even though we used it in a different way. Sandile suggested we should assign the text property to blank. We've done that. You can also use this to clear the text box by using the method textbox7.clear or whatever it is. But in this case, we've already done this as well to close the program. Now we are within the get grade button, which is here. So this is where we are now. Okay, so for this program, we want to declare a variable called final mark of the student. Final mark, okay, as integer. All right, we want to declare that variable as integer. Then, how do we calculate the final mark of a student? Now we do the calculation. Final mark is equal to, okay, before I use the convert, let me just say final mark is going to be text box 4.text plus text box 5.text text box 6.text all divided by 3. Remember, that was how the instruction told us to get the final mark. Okay, the average text box 4 plus text box 5 plus text box 6 all divided by 3. However, remember we said by nature the text box assumes everything to be a string. So that is why we need to convert the content of a text box from a string, in this case, to decimal or to integer. Okay, so I first wrote this out so that you understand what's going on. So normally this wouldn't work as you want because the text box needs to be converted. The content of the text box needs to be converted to a number because normally text boxes treat their content as strings. So whatever you enter into the text box will be treated as a string. Let me see if I can just try that. So if I enter test 1 as 34, test 2 as 65, and test 3 as 34. Okay, we don't have something to show us the final mark, so we don't have a button for final mark, so this is not going to even show us anything anyway. Yeah, there is nothing like that. But here, this is supposed to find the average, and the average of the marks will be the final mark, but it's not going to show us the integer, the number value, until we convert each of these to a particular number data type. So here we want to convert to decimal using this function. You can check the previous practical or tutorial where we talked about the need to convert text boxes from their strings to another data type, especially when we need them as numbers and not as strings or text. So here you can now say convert dot to decimal, whatever is in text box 4 dot text, plus convert dot to decimal, whatever is in text box 5 dot text, and then plus convert to decimal, whatever is in text box 6 dot text. So that's what we've done. That's why I try to first type out the first thing before converting it so that you can understand what I'm trying to do. So by adding these convert functions, then the content is now becomes a number and no longer a text or a string. Okay, but as I said, in the design, in the interface, we don't have something to show us the final mark. We only want the final grade. Okay, so the final grade obviously depends on the final mark. So how do we get the final grade? Okay, so whatever the final mark is, let's assume is 56 or 72, whatever it is, then we use a select case statement to say select case final mark. Remember, the final mark is our variable. So end select automatically is written for you here. So in the case whereby the final mark is, remember the final mark is the result of all these things. All right, that's the final mark. So select case final mark. We are looking for the case in which, if the case, that's the final answer obtained up there, is greater than or equal to 80, then text box 7 dot text. In this case, text box 7 dot text is this text box, is this one, which is the final grade. That's the text box 7. We are saying that if case of the final mark is greater than or equal to 80, that means if the final value obtained after doing all of this is greater than or equal to 80, then text box 7 dot text, which is this one that is faded out, must show the a, show this a string. So that's how to use the case statement. And then in a case whereby the final mark is between 70 to 79, right? Then the text box should show, the same text box should show the B grade. The same text box should show the B grade. In a case whereby the final mark is between 60 to 69, then the text box should show what? The C grade. Text box should show the C grade. In a case whereby the final mark is 50 to 59, the text box should show the D grade. In a case where the final mark is 20 to 49, the text box should show the F grade. And in the case where the final mark is less than 20, then the text box should show the G grade. Okay, and by doing that, you end the select statement, and then we can run the program. So run the program. Student number 210345678. First name, let's say it's Victor, and the surname is Faniron. So if this student obtained 68 in the first test and 73 in the second test and 45 in the third test, if you click get grade, you see the grade it brings, it's just the letter C. It doesn't bring the actual mark because we didn't, all we want is the grade. To make this maybe a little bit more explanatory, you can decide to maybe add another text box to show you the final mark. But you know, the instruction doesn't tell us to do that. But if you just want to understand it better, you can add another text box here to show you final mark, and then a label to say final mark. Let's just call this final mark. Okay, and then this is text box. This is going to be text box 8. Okay, so if you want to show your final mark, you can say text box 8.text is equal to final mark. Okay, so let's see how this works. So I'll just keep the names for now. I'll say 76, 87, 50. If you click get grade, you see the final mark actually now shows as 71. So this 71, the final grade for this, sorry, the grade for this 71 obviously is B. So if you check here, is the case between 70 to 79, that is B. So that's just to show you how the final mark is automatically calculated to the grade. So in the case where the final mark is 70 to 79, then the text box should show B, and that's why we have B here. But we ignored showing this final mark because all we are interested in is the grade of the student. And we're going to stop here for today. And please drop your student numbers and campus in the chat section, and we shall meet some other time. If you have any questions, please send me an email, or you can also watch the videos that will be uploaded later on Moodle to catch up on what was done today. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to drop your student numbers before you leave.